Mom was always a strong woman, strong in every sense of the word. Intelligent, wise, even-tempered, funny, determined. I remember overhearing a conversation in which two women from my church were talking about the trials of motherhood and how easy it is to give in to frustration. But not Esther, they said, and one turned to me. If only I had a little bit of Esther in me. Mom was young, too. She was only 52 when I got the phone call. I don't remember if the ringing phone woke me up that morning or if I was already starting to get ready for work. I'll never forget the words that followed, though. It was my brother. Rachel. He sounded a little panicked. Mom fell. Is she okay? I asked, hoping she was, but knowing she wasn't if he was calling me that early in the morning. At that point, I think he broke down sobbing. What happened? I asked. But the thing is, we don't really know what happened. It was about 5:30 in the morning. Mom got up to use the bathroom like she often did at that time. Dad woke up when he felt her get out of bed. He heard my sister leave for work, heard Mom go downstairs, heard a crash, and then silence. When he got downstairs, Mom was lying on the hardwood floor of our dining room, unconscious and bleeding from her head. "Marlon!" he called, and my brother came downstairs to help. They called 911 and tried to keep my mom from hurting herself because she had begun thrashing. The EMTs arrived and said she needed to be airlifted, so they drove her to a nearby park where the helicopter could land. At that point, Marlon called me. Mom was airlifted to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, an hour away. No one was allowed in the helicopter with her, so we had to drive ourselves. We sat in the waiting room with our two pastors while she was in surgery. She was out of surgery by 1:00 p.m. The surgeon told us that they had removed a piece of her skull to allow her brain to swell without causing further damage. He also said that the injury was to the part of the brain that controls communication and other relational functions. He didn't give us a prognosis. Before she was airlifted, she was sedated because of the thrashing. After surgery, they took her off the sedatives, but she didn't wake up, so they sedated her again and ran more tests. We prayed that she would wake up, and we asked everyone that we knew to pray too. Finally, at 8:30 that night, she opened her eyes. The look on her face was one of panic and confusion, but it brought so much relief and hope to all of us. A great weight lifted from her shoulders with that sign of consciousness. Mom spent 10 days in the ICU, each day showing signs of improvement. On the third day, she began to assert herself. The nurse came in to brush her teeth, and when he put the toothbrush in her mouth, she clamped down on it to let him know she didn't like it. That was the first of many stories of her demonstrations of stubbornness and determination. At one point or another, while she was in the hospital, she pulled out everything that was attached to her. Everything. PICC lines, IVs, the brain pressure monitor, her catheter, everything. We laughed at each new escapade because it meant she was able to reason through things. But it also meant she had to be under constant watch because she was fast and strong. The first thing every new nurse said to us was, "Your mom is strong." Once, it took both my dad and my brother to keep her from pulling out one of her IVs. To protect her, the nurses strapped her arms to the bed, but even that didn't always work because if the straps were too loose, she would undo them. So they put mittens on her hands and tied the straps tighter. The humorous moments were only a brief respite, though. As Mom became more alert, she also became more aware of her pain and her disabilities. As the pain medicine wore off between doses, she desperately wanted to rub her head, but with a piece of her skull missing, that would have been disastrous. She couldn't communicate with us either because she had a tracheotomy and was on a ventilator to help with her breathing. She hadn't yet recovered enough to write. Seeing her in such pain and frustration and being incapable to do anything to help was sometimes almost more than we could bear. On the 15th day, Mom was moved to a rehab center much closer to home. At rehab, her progress was a little easier to measure. Her first whispers when they capped her trach, her first steps with a walker, her first handwriting sample, her first bites of real food. Therapy was hard work for her. Basic things that we take for granted, like walking and writing our names, were so draining to her that she would get a severe headache and just want to sleep by the time it was over. On Monday, November 9th, after 15 days at the hospital and 5 weeks in rehab, Mom came home. Therapist came several times a week to work with her. We saw improvements, but we also saw regressions. Her right side stopped cooperating like it had been. Her right leg would suddenly give out while she was walking, and she started trying to use her left hand to do things. The doctors didn't have a definitive answer for us. All we could do was pray and hope it would be corrected. On December 21st, she underwent surgery to have the piece of her skull put back in. The change was instantaneous. When we got to the recovery room, one of the first things she did was show us she could move both of her hands equally again. It was the best news we had in a long time. 2 days later, on December 23rd, Mom came home for good, just in time for Christmas. The therapist continued to come for another month or two, and then we were completely on our own. Physically, she was mostly back to normal by the beginning of summer. Verbally, she still struggles, but she continues to progress, and at this point, most people wouldn't know that there's anything wrong. And on January 30th, 2013, the final recovery hurdle was cleared. Mom passed her driver's test and got her license back. Congratulations, Mom. Your strength still inspires us.